Last 3 days I took a class on Grihastha life. There's a organization and a movement called the Grihastha Vision Team, and they have a site. If you Google Grihastha Vision Team, Grihastha Vision Team, there's a lot of nice resources there, and then they give workshops, and they're coming out with a book. Supposedly it was going to be available today. It hasn't come yet, but it's coming to Mayapur. So I don't know how you're going to get the book, but it's called Heart to Heart Connection. I think you should get a lot of books if they're available and give them to your friends, because what they're teaching is very important. And one of the things they do is they have 3 different workshops on Grihastha life, both to help people who haven't gotten married yet to know what they're getting into, which they have no idea of generally, and then to help people who are already married. And also they have workshops to help people, guide people who are not yet married. To guide people, to mentor people who are married. So I thought we could review what they taught. A lot of what they taught I've already taught in this workshop. And if you haven't been coming to this workshop, then if you go to my YouTube channel, and then you go to the classes on marriage, you can listen to them or you can download them. We're up to 24 now, so this is the 25th class. And I think I wanted to address probably one of the most what I found to be the most fundamental element of the workshop. I don't know if everyone saw it that way, but I saw it this way. And one of the fundamental problems that I see is that in reading Prabhupada's books, we misunderstand what he's saying. Not that it just relates to household life, it relates to all kinds of things. And so I wanted to review some of those misconceptions. Some of them I've already reviewed, such as the dominant husband, the husband is guru, the dominant husband and the submissive wife, the wife does whatever the husband says, and the connotation is the husband basically can do anything and say anything. But we've talked a bit about that that's not what that means, but one of the things we discussed in the workshop were other misconceptions that were actually causes for divorce, which is quite interesting. You think, how could our philosophy be the cause of divorce? And it actually was. So, one of the things that was discussed is that there were certain negative paradigms within the organization of ISKCON, and one of the negative paradigms is that if you're married, basically you're not going to be Krishna conscious, or you're going to be in Maya, or in some way your life is going to be very burdened, very difficult, very materialistic. Another idea that came up was that you get married to enjoy. You get married to enjoy sense gratification. And when that idea comes up, then both of those ideas come up, and people, they don't understand why anybody would get married. And if for some reason somebody does get married, then when they enter the Grihastha ashram, they enter it with an expectation that it's not going to be good. It's just going to be Maya. It's going to be something I have to tolerate. So it's a very, very negative connotation. Another negative connotation is there shouldn't be affection. Deep affection and friendship is wrong. It's bad. It's entangling. It's Maya. So all these conceptions were involving some aspect of Grihastha life being either bad, either being a cause of fall down, or being Maya, or assuring that it would be Maya, and that any kind of happiness or deeper connection or good relationship in Grihastha life was bad, was wrong. Something's wrong with you, Prabhu. You have a good relationship with your wife. You should do something to upset it, because you're going to go to hell because you like her. And, of course, Scripture says that, if you're attached to a woman, you go to hell. So we read things like this, and it creates all kinds of problems. Now, it's true, if you go to Shastra, it does deride household life, but it derides materialistic household life. It doesn't deride Krishna conscious household life. But unfortunately, distinctions are not made. It's just all grouped into one, and then we get a lot of negative connotations about householder life. So householder life is bad because the scripture says it's bad. The scripture is talking about household life which is not connected to Krishna. Everything's bad if it's not connected to Krishna, yes? How can something be bad if it's connected to Krishna? What makes it bad is it's disconnected from Krishna. Simple philosophy. How did we miss that? What makes it good is that it's connected to Krishna. So you take something bad, connected to Krishna, it's good. You take something good, you disconnect it from Krishna, and it's bad. Because bad or good are not so much inherent within something, but it's inherent with the use of it. It's inherent within the outcome you get based on how you use it, based on your motives for using it. So, this idea people have, okay, you have the wrong idea that household life means Maya. Therefore, if household life means Maya, then you get married for sense gratification. If you get married for sense gratification, you miss the whole point. You get married to advance in Krishna consciousness. Then people say, well, why, if you want to advance in Krishna consciousness, would you get married? Because married life is Maya. So we have this circle. And then, if you believe married life is Maya, but you feel you need to be married, then you've already predisposed yourself for being in Maya. And then your husband or wife is the cause of you being in Maya. And then the whole thing is, it's dysfunctional. It's not natural. So, one time, one of our gurus, who's a Grihastha, was asked, why did you get married, or why does anybody get married? And he made a simple point. He said, it's natural. And you actually look at the world. To be a monk, to be a sannyasi, is abnormal. Abnormal is not a good word, but for lack of a better word, it's not normal. What's normal is for people to be married. And traditionally, what's normal is that, if you read in Bhagavatam about materialistic household life, one of the reasons it puts it down is because people were happy in it. Not that they were distressed, they were actually happy. They had a nice family. Said, no, you have a nice family. Now your husband's attached to his wife, and then there's the grandkids, and he's attached to the grandkids, and everything's nice, and the cousins, the aunts and uncles, and it's so nice, he comes back again and stays in the material world. But if every aunt, uncle, and cousin, and wife and kid were Krishna conscious, it would be a little bit different, because that association would be based on serving Krishna. And so together you'd have this big family that was working together to serve Krishna, was working together to make other people Krishna conscious. So it's a different principle. So we shouldn't mix them up, because if we have negative connotations towards Grihastha life, which many people do, and especially it is often preached to the single men in an effort to get them to remain single, then they're told many bad things about Grihastha life, and inevitably they're told bad things about women. Well, women are this, women are that. And so if you hear negative things about women, you get married, it creates a very difficult situation. It practically guarantees you that you're going to have difficulty. And if we hear negative things about women, it creates problems all over our movement in relation to women, because then women are looked down. So it's something which is misunderstood. We read something, we take it at face value, we don't really understand it. We have this thing that women are less intelligent. I'd say 90% or more of the people, when they read that, don't really understand what it means, or they don't understand it well. They misapply it. And then women don't have opportunities in areas where they could be successfully serving, perhaps better than men, based on the idea that we think they're less intelligent. So it's another what we call unhealthy paradigm. So in the Course we talked about a lot of unhealthy paradigms. In fact, the way they started this Course, or the way the Course developed, was they made a list, and they said, excuse me, unfortunately, the list was about 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 11 flip charts of unhealthy paradigms in ISKCON, which is kind of shocking, that a spiritual philosophy that teaches love of God and service to others would have so many unhealthy paradigms about relationship between husband and wife, which should be based on service. and should be something which is healthy and good and close and so forth. So they realized that within ISKCON there's all kinds of unhealthy paradigms in relation to women, men, and household life. And so they developed principles in the workshop to counteract those. So it wasn't even, when you look at it, it's kind of a sad situation because they weren't entering the workshop from a point of neutral to train people. They were entering it from a negative point, finding that people had misread our philosophy to such a degree that it created bad relationships amongst men and women. Now, the real shock, I hope you're sitting down because if you're standing up, you probably fall over when I say this. This is a real shock. So, sit down. If there's anyone in your house, go ask them to come and hold your hand. The shock that I didn't know about was that there's more divorce in our movement than there is in the secular world. Which is actually, it's not shocking, it's disgusting. Because it means we have created an artificial or an unnatural, dysfunctional situation between men and women based on our philosophy, but not based on our philosophy, based on a misunderstanding of our philosophy. And as I said, that one would think that within a spiritual movement, which is based on bhakti or devotion, and bhakti is based on humility, service, and forgiveness, that relationships would be pretty much perfect amongst individuals because it's based on service, and it's based on humility, it's based on compassion, and based on forgiveness, and that's the basis of bhakti. But then the male-female relationships come together, and the man thinks, I'm the boss, you do everything I say, you're just a woman, what do you know? And there we go, downhill, mess. And anyway, Grihastha life is just Maya, and we shouldn't really have a good relationship, and we shouldn't be close, and we shouldn't touch, and this, that, and the next thing. So that was the foundation upon which the workshop was built, and that's sad, to say the least. But I think it's important for us to understand as individuals that we have a tendency to misunderstand the philosophy. And when we read the philosophy, we have to understand that what we're reading, there's a million other instructions that edify that instruction. But if we're reading it and we only see that instruction and we don't have a broad view, because we're not that well equipped yet to understand Krishna consciousness, we can jump to wrong conclusions. Unfortunately, even more senior devotees can jump to wrong conclusions because they may not be experienced in a certain area. And so their understanding may be more literal. When we say literal, it means you're taking something at face value without understanding the broadness and the depth of the instruction, without understanding the context of the instruction, or without understanding deeply the practical implications of the instruction. So, I came out of the workshop completely depressed, frustrated, upset, and lamenting. Because I realized how pervasive misunderstanding is. And as a result of that misunderstanding, many people suffer, both men and women. And one of the realities of Krishna consciousness is that Grihastha ashram is the ashram which most people join. Brahmacharya ashram and Vanaprastha and Sannyas ashram are the least popular. The most popular is Grihastha ashram. That's where most people end up in. And we've been so, I don't want to say we're not well equipped, rather we've been ill-equipped in many cases. What to speak of being well-equipped, we've been ill-equipped. At least if we weren't ill-equipped, it would be better. But often we've been ill-equipped. What to speak of well-equipped? So, and what I'm teaching you here, I'm trying to equip you, but it's also important to not carry these negative connotations about Grihastha life and be afraid. There's a fear of having a good relationship, which is not a healthy way of thinking. The only fear that a devotee should ever have is the fear of forgetting Krishna. And forgetting Krishna has nothing to do with being a grihastha or not being a grihastha. And to think that it does is an illusion. Forgetting Krishna can be caused by materialistic household life. So yes, if you're married and your life becomes materialistic, that's another thing. But if you get married and you live in Krishna consciousness, then that relationship is meant to help you. That's why you get married. That's the purpose. That's why you do it. You get married to advance in Krishna consciousness. You don't get married because you want to have sex and you want to make a lot of money and have a nice house and eat well. That might come as a byproduct, but that's not the reason. If that's your reason, yeah, then you're going to be in trouble. Your reason is because you want to serve together, you want someone to help you and to help them. And just like we have here with us our friend Chandan. So Chandan is working as a doctor, and in his career he's thinking that he might go into the military. And then he'll be stationed near a military base, and he'll be alone. And probably you'll have to move it to a few times, right? So if he lives as a single man, it could be difficult for him. But if he has a wife, there's stability, because wherever he goes, she'll be there. They can do programs together. She'll take care of the deities. She'll cook prasadam for him, and so on and so forth. So if he's going to get married, he would only get married because he sees that as something positive, as a stabilizing force in his life, where there's someone who he can partner with in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, he's in his profession in the military, and he's the only devotee. Of course, he could make devotees, and then he could have association, but you understand the principle. So he's looking at the situation and I told him, he asked me, he said, I'm confused. Should I get married? And I said, definitely you should, because you need that stability, otherwise you're on your own. And so he was saying that sometimes he's busy and there's not facility and he doesn't have time to cook. So then, as a wife, he's cooking, she's cooking, he gets prasadam, the deities are nicely taken care of. He has someone to discuss Krishna consciousness with, someone to do kirtan with, so on and so forth. So, forgetting Krishna is our own doing, and it's not that we would blame it on our husband or wife or our children or whatever. No, I'm not saying there are not responsibilities and obligations and difficulties in household life, but it actually builds responsibility, and many men and women become stronger because of it. So the point I'm making is, in ISKCON we have developed a lot of unhealthy paradigms about Grihastha life, which have formed the foundation for many unsuccessful marriages. Now, one of the things that we learned in the workshop is that, at least I learned, I mean, I've studied this, so I think perhaps my perspective on it is a little different than the other students. But one of the paradigms we have in ISKCON is almost that it's bad to have a good relationship, that would be Maya. Because the good relationship would mean material enjoyment, and we don't want to enjoy materially. But it's true, we don't want to enjoy materially, but what does it mean to have a good relationship with a devotee? Be her or he a spouse or not. Good relationship means something which is healthy, something where you get along well, you like one another, you can talk, you can share. And if you're good devotees, what do you talk about? What do you share? What do you do together? Go to Disneyland? Eat cotton candy? Go to movies? No. Now, if you're not good devotees, yeah, you'll do that. But don't blame it on household life, because you would do it anyway. Right? If you're going to go to a movie with your wife, you go to a movie without your wife. That's just your tendency. But if you put two good devotees together and they have a very good relationship, what do they do when they're together? What do they talk about? If they're good, what do good devotees talk about? Krishna. So you have a really good relationship with your wife, and you talk to her a lot. You go, oh, Prabhu, that's Maya, you're talking to your wife too much. you better go associate with the brahmacharis, you're in trouble. No, you're in trouble if you're talking about how to enjoy, but you're talking about Krishna or how to serve Krishna. So I think the problem is that the way people would see two members of the opposite sex associating, then somehow or other they think you're not supposed to do that. Excuse me, two members of the same sex, you're not supposed to do that or have that kind of relationship with members of the opposite sex, because that would be Maya. Anyway, I'm just saying this because you may not think this way, but a lot of devotees think this way. And what you gain from reading Bhagavatam is the conception that it is this way, but it's actually describing life without Krishna consciousness, grihastha life without Krishna consciousness. So then you can make that mistake. So that was what depressed me. And I think what we're up against is a culture and a philosophy which is a little bit alien to us, and then we're trying to apply the culture and philosophy. And sometimes the problem is we're trying to apply the philosophy without the culture. We don't even know what the culture is. So then we just have a principle, and we don't know how to apply the principle. Now, another thing we talked about, and Bhakti-Vidyapurna Swami talks about, he says there's 4 stages. There's Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. 4 stages. So you can see my hand. I have to move, because I have to look at myself. You see my hand? Yeah. Oh, here it is. No, I shouldn't put my hand over my face. All right. 4 stages, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 stages. So now one would think, okay, if there's 4 stages, then it makes sense that if you go from Brahmacharya to Grihastha, you've moved up 1. And if you go from Grihastha to Vanaprastha, you've moved up 1. And if you go from Vanaprastha to Sannyas, you've moved up 1. But many people think when you go from Brahmacharya to Grihastha, you move down 1. Well, that's a misunderstanding. At least it's not meant to move you down. If you take it, it's meant to move you up. It'll move you down if you don't do it correctly. But any ashram that you don't do correctly will move you down. So it's meant to help you expand your service. It's meant to help you live more peacefully and so forth. So we want to develop an attitude towards Grihastha life, which I use the word natural, because I believe that when many devotees read our philosophy, when they don't understand it well, and they don't understand it contextually within a culture that the teachings are founded in, then they start to act unnaturally and artificially, and then they behave in ways which normally they wouldn't behave, or they behave in ways that people would normally not behave. So, okay, women are less intelligent. Okay, if women are less intelligent, that means they're not as useful as men, so then now they're second-class citizens, and they should be treated that way. And so just stay in the back, stay out of sight, don't talk, don't bother me, just cook and clean the house, and everything's good, right? So, now, of course, we know that that's not the understanding, but there are men who believe that's the understanding, and they're existing in our movement, and some of them are actually in high positions. Now, how did they get that understanding, or why do they understand that way? Because they believe that's what Krishna consciousness is. They believe that's what's Vedic, because it's right there, that's what it is. And so, one of the things we discussed in the course was that Vedic paradigms may or may not work today because people are not trained. So we trained in Vedic paradigms. So we have to take Vedic principles and then we have to apply them in ways that work. Because if you take a principle and you hold tight to the principle and apply it in every situation in the same way to the point where it doesn't work for people, then it's a failure. So you want to understand the principle, but then you want to apply it within the cultural context so it works for the couple, because the ultimate goal is to be Krishna conscious. The ultimate goal is not just to stick to a detail in the name of maintaining a principle. The goal is to maintain a principle, but adjust the details so that the principle will work. So the highest principle is to always think of Krishna, never forget him. So now we've been talking a lot about interesting things like when a woman is honored, that's where the demigods reside, or Lakshmi resides, and protection of women and so forth. So that's culture. So now if you don't have that culture, and then you read women are less intelligent, women are a cause of material entanglement, which it says there in our books, then you denigrate them to a position of second, third, or fourth class citizens. But you weren't raised in a culture where women were honored, because you were raised in a Western culture where women are half naked on billboards, which is not really honoring them. And then women are, they're good for what? Well, they're good for sex. That's what's ingrained in our consciousness. They're not very smart. They can't do things that men do. They're not good mechanically. They can't fix things, So they're good for cooking. They're good for having kids. They're good for sex, and that's about it. Now, you might think, oh, come on, Mahatma, men don't think like that. Yeah, they do, and they wear tilak and dhotis and kurtas, and they think like that. And why do they think like that? Well, because they read it in the Bhagavatam, that's why. You say, no, that's not in the Bhagavatam. It's not, but if you don't read the Bhagavatam right, that's what you read. So that's one of the main problems that was addressed in the workshop, that you actually read things that make you act in ways which are against what I would say natural ways that people would act. Even non-devotees would act. So it's something to consider when you're studying Shastra, to be careful. Okay, so why is there an echo? What about now? No echo for me. Who's got the echo? Who said they have an echo? Is it my connection? Could be. Could be. Only kidding. No. Okay. All right. I don't know. This is difficult. Maybe difficult without more practical examples. But there's a principle, and you'll see it. It's called seeing things black and white. You read something, you don't understand it well, but you think you do, and you take it absolutely literally. This is how it is. Not understanding the application, not understanding the meaning or intent. Just like we gave the example that in Prabhupada's books it says the woman should be submissive to the husband and do whatever he wants. So then a devotee comes to Prabhupada and says, Prabhupada, does this mean my wife should do whatever I tell her? And Prabhupada said, and you should be so arrogant, because what is the relationship? You get married, and the relationship you have with a woman is, I tell you what to do and you do it. Is that a relationship? Is that a relationship of husband and wife? Not really. It's a relationship of master and servant. So he misunderstood the instruction, and then Prabhupada's thinking, wait a minute, a relationship between husband and wife is one of service and exchange. That's what Prabhupada has said so many times, that to be married means to take care of your husband, take care of your wife. It means to serve them. It means to show affection, all these things. And then he reads an instruction for the woman, which says you should be submissive and do whatever your husband says. That's instruction for her. Then he takes that instruction and says, oh, that means she should do whatever I tell her. So then his nature to control, enjoy, and boss overtakes him. Then he reads that instruction and he doesn't understand what it means. And then it creates obviously, there's no woman that marries a man just to be told what to do, unless she's psychologically weak and just, I can't decide anything, I just want a man to tell me everything, what sari to wear, what toothpaste to use, what I should eat for breakfast. You understand? That it's just like it doesn't make sense. So that was a big depressing part of the workshop, when we had to list all these unhealthy paradigms that exist within ISKCON, or have existed. And one of the reasons of the workshop was to clear those up. Okay, so Ketan says, There's a sloka, maybe from Bhagavatam, which says, Griha Medha Andhakupam. Grihastha life is a blind well. How do we understand it? Materialistic life. Griha Medhi. Griha Medhi means one whose Medhi, center of his life, is the Griha, the home. But a devotee, the center of his life is what? The home or Krishna? Who's in the center of a devotee's house? The deity. So, if you make the center of your house you and your material desires, then it's a deep well, because now you're stuck in the material world, full of material desires, and you make the house Krishna the center of your house, then you're grihastha. So griha medhi. That's it. Right? Now Chaitanya wants a husband who'll do whatever she says. Well, Chaitanya, you should go to the robot store and find one. Then he'll do whatever you say. So, of course we know realistically that ultimately we don't really want someone that will do whatever we say. We want reciprocal relationships where both parties are trying to serve one another. That's what we really want. And that's what it's all about. And we were discussing another thing, a quote from Radhanath Swami. He said something very nice. He said, at a wedding, he said, to be a good grihastha, you have to learn. Yeah, you can come to the local robot store. You can get a husband, a wife, a cook, a cleaner. You get a good brahmachari, good servant, robot. So he said, to be a grihastha, to be successful in grihastha life, you have to practice humility, you have to practice tolerance, kindness, compassion. And he said, these are all the qualities you need for bhakti. So he said, in grihastha life, you learn how to be a good devotee, because you have to develop the qualities of a bhakta. So Ketan says, well, that means he didn't agree. What is the guarantee that after marriage we would become a grihastha, not a grihamedi? The risk is there. What's the guarantee? If you do it right, first is you have to understand what the purpose is. If you enter grihastha ashram for the right purpose, if you have mentors in the grihastha ashram, if the purpose is to advance in Krishna consciousness, if that's why you're doing it, if you're being guided by qualified people, if you're doing it as a service to Guru and Krishna and to your spouse, then the chances are you'll make it. If you do it for any other reason, there's a good chance you won't make it. Or you might stay together, but you might not be Krishna conscious. So, I think one of the most important things for anyone getting married to do is to learn about married life, and what it means, how to act as a proper husband or wife. Why are you doing this? Be very clear, and don't enter grihastha life with the mood that you're going to do this just to enjoy. That's why you're doing it. I'm marrying this woman to enjoy her, and the woman's thinking I'm marrying this man to enjoy him. And then it's just a mess. So Chaitan is now going to become a nun. Become the first Hare Krishna nun. Chaitan, you have to start your own convent for frustrated grihasthas, who will then become nuns. Yeah. So, a lot of times devotees, this is another misconception. Devotees are thinking, well, I'll get married, and then, according to Bhagavatam, it's going to be full of trouble and difficulty and miseries, and then I'll become detached because it's so miserable. And then I'll fulfill the purpose of grihastha life, to get detached. Detachment is the purpose of grihastha life, but detachment will come from doing grihastha life right and properly. And detachment will actually come from having a good relationship. Like let's say Ketan or Chaitanya, or any of you. Let's say you very much liked halava. I think we've used this example. You very much like halava. But throughout your whole life, you could never get good halava, and all the halava you ate never satisfied you. And sometimes the halava it was burnt. Sometimes it had salt in it instead of sugar. Sometimes it had raisins, but the raisins were burnt to a crisp. You ever had burnt raisins? They taste really bad. They're bitter, I think. So let's say all the halava you've had, it was never good. And now you're an old man, you're thinking, I want more halava. And you say, but you've been eating halava all your life. And you say, yeah, I know I have, but it never tasted good. I never had any good halava. So, okay, maybe if you're very renounced, you'll just say, look, I spent my whole life eating bad halava, so I'm not going to eat halava. But I think most people would say, I spent my whole life eating bad halava, I want to eat good halava. So, but if you spent your whole life eating good halava, in Ketan, eat a lot of carrot halava, so when you're older you won't eat it. So you spent your whole life eating good halava, then if all that good halava you ate was prasadam offered to Krishna, so you had a good household life, which means it was good in Krishna consciousness, then you naturally just become detached by nature's own process, that you fulfill certain needs. And as you're fulfilling these needs, you're becoming more Krishna conscious. Krishna consciousness makes you detached. So you naturally come to a point where you don't really, you may be married at that point, you're 60, 70, you don't really need it. You might be together, but you don't need what you needed when you were 20 because you fulfilled those desires. But if you didn't fulfill those desires, then when you're 70, you could be frustrated. Say, I can't detach because I never enjoyed it. Or you'll just want to do it again. Or you'll just cheat on your spouse while you're married to have somebody be nice to you and enjoy with them. So, a lot of times we find this situation where a man or wife cheats on their spouse because they're not getting what they need at home. So, if you have a good, happy relationship, it's stable, it's healthy, it's not wrong, it's not maya. Contrary is true in most cases. So, Ketan says, how do we find a good spouse? Because Srila Prabhupada said, we can't have a girlfriend or boyfriend. Culture in ISKCON. Very good question. This is a problem. Okay. Where do I find a good mentor? Go to the Grihastha Vision Team. And maybe you can do mentorship. Worst comes to worst, you could do it online with some of the Grihastha Vision Team mentors if there's nobody locally. So, one of the things that we talked about, which for me was the most educational for me, was how to understand if the partner you're choosing is the right one. And one of the things that they said, I guess based on research or statistics, was that you can't really get to know a person for about 2 years. Being with them, interacting with them for 2 years. Interesting, huh? Now you might say, well, what if my parents knew this boy or this girl growing up and their parents knew, and yeah, that's a little different, and they've done the astrology. You might get more help, but still, it takes time to know a person, and we do have this problem in that in ISKCON you can't just, ideally you don't just go off with some girl or guy. So usually what you'll have is you'll have some mentor or somebody there with you, helping you. But anyway, just to give you an idea, she told a story that one lady had gone to one of her seminars, and in one of the seminars it said that if you're thinking of marrying someone, it's good to do a lot of things with them and be in different situations. so that you can see how they act in different situations. Because, they're with you at the temple, and they're Haribol, and you're Haribol, and they really like hearing and chanting, and you like hearing and chanting, and they like prasadam, and you like prasadam, and they like deity worship, and you like deity worship. But that's just one aspect. That's the spiritual aspect of your life. And then maybe you go out with them, and, hey, let's go for a walk, and you're like walking really fast, and they're, "No, I can't walk that fast." I say, "What's wrong with you?" I say, "Well, I'm not that healthy and not that athletic." And you're like super athletic. And they go, "Oh, okay, that's one thing you just learned." Whether or not that's going to make it or break it's another thing. But you just learned something you didn't know. But the story that she told was, or you go to the restaurant and you order carrot juice, salad, and soup, and they order everything fried, and you go, "Oh, okay, they're not into health. I didn't know that." You know what I'm saying? But one thing that was very interesting was that the couple, they were thinking of getting married, so she heard, spend time in different situations and observe. Don't just spend time to have a good time, but observe what's going on. Observe their values, their character, their commitment, their honesty, their integrity. You see it all by what they do, and observe how they're interacting with other people. So I'll give you the real life example, but I'll give you some possible examples. You go to the store, something says it's on sale, normally $50, now it's $25. The sale ended today, but they didn't take the sign down. So then you get up there to pay for it, and they said it's $50. And you said, there's a sign that said it was $25. And then the person checks and he goes, "I'm sorry, that sign was supposed to be taken down today. It's supposed to be $50. And then the person said, "But the sign's there, you have to give it to me." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was a mistake." He said, "Let me talk to the manager." And he's getting all irate, and you're watching this, and he's yelling at the manager, "How can you do this? This is cheating." And you're watching this person, and you're starting to see, oh, this is how this person acts. He wasn't nice about it. He didn't say, "Oh, could I talk to the manager?" And then he speaks to the manager and says, "You did have the sign up, and I understand it was not supposed to be a sale, but I think, it would be a good policy if you would honor that because the sign's up." And the manager said, "Okay, I agree." And then you like him, say, he stood up for what he believed, but he was nice. You go, "I really like that." Or he just lost it. He was yelling at the manager, yelling at the cashier. And then you're looking at this and you're going, okay, this is how he deals with it. And then either you go, "I don't want to be with a guy like that," or you talk to him and say, "At the store today, I saw you lost it. I was not impressed by your communication skills. Are you willing to work on them?" And he says, "What are you talking about? That guy was a jerk. He deserved it." And then you understand, okay, he doesn't want to work on his communication skills. This may not be the person you want to deal with. The real life story was they were on a train, and for some reason when he was getting off the train, as he was getting off the train, the door closed. So he had to back off, and he couldn't get off the train, or he got his hand caught in and he had to pull it out. And he got so angry, he punched the glass window on the train and broke it. And she wrote back to the teachers who gave the workshop on Grihastha life. She said, "I'm so thankful that I took that lesson, because when I saw what he did, I realized I had no idea he had this side of him." And I said, "I wouldn't want to marry a man who has such a lack of control of his anger." So, so you need to spend time with the person you're thinking of marrying, and so maybe in your local situation there's ways to do that, or somebody comes with you, or you spend it with other couples that are thinking of getting married or something. But what's happening? We'll see you later, Vrindavani. What's happening is what I'm getting. A lot of devotees are writing to me and saying, "Well, this person's interested in me, And even people are writing to me and say, this person's saying he wants to marry me or he loves me, and he's only known me 5 days. And just the fact that anybody would consider having a relationship, seriously consider that a man says, I love you in 5 days, and this be the one, shows a real lack of understanding of what it takes to get to know a person. And so, one of the things, they gave lists of things you should look for. And these are all lists of things that are required for a good relationship, both for ourselves and others. Of course, now we're talking about what to look for in the others, but just when I tell you this, just be aware this is what you should look for in yourself. So, we talked about things about integrity, commitment, truthful, trustworthy, reliable. So how do you know? You say, well, you're with them. They say, okay, let's meet tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and they show up at 5. Oh, he committed to 4, he showed up at 5. What they say is, and we've talked about this, and say, when you really like the person, you overlook it. You don't even notice that they came at 5 o'clock, because you like being with them so much, and you're just so happy they came at 5. Say, no, you have to notice. They came at 5 and they said 4. That means, do they have issues with commitment? So, you may not say anything, but then they committed to do something else, and they called you up and said, no, I can't do it. And so you start to see a pattern. Or they said something, but the next day they said something else, and they seem to be changing stories. And so you want to know what are the qualities that make a good spouse. And trustworthiness is really on the top of the list. Commitment. Another important thing, and we've talked about this, so remember, when we're talking about this, we're not just talking about in terms of the person that you want to marry, but in terms of yourself. Are they willing to work on themselves? This is one of the biggest things that came up. At least for me, I believe this is one of the biggest things. Are they willing to work on themselves? Because if you're willing to work on yourself, which means work on yourself means to being reflective enough or open enough to get feedback where there's something wrong that you're doing that's harming the relationship that you need to change, and you're willing to work on that, and your spouse is also in the same position, it's unlikely you'll ever have a bad marriage, and it's unlikely you'll ever have real major issues, because you can always resolve them. I mean, if you're a totally unmatched couple like Marriage Made in Hell, maybe. But generally, you'll be able to work things out because you're open and honest enough and you're willing to change. But if you get this kind of attitude where, this is how I am, I can't change, many people have that attitude, then I wouldn't marry somebody like that, because it's not going to work. And if you're like that, you're not ready to be married either, because you're just going to cause pain for another person. So being self-reflective and or being open to honest and helpful feedback and be willing to work on it, to change in order that you can be a better husband or wife, is essential. And don't marry anybody who doesn't have that quality, and don't get married if you don't have it, because it's not going to work. So these are things you look for. So you see when you're associating with a person, perhaps there's a situation and you say, you said this or did this and that was upsetting to me. Do you think, in situations like this you could act this way rather than that way, or try to be like this or like that? And if the person says, I'm sorry I did that, and I know what you're saying is true, it wasn't right, and I will try to be better, then okay, this is a good sign. If the person says, that's just how I am, and if you don't like it, then I can't do anything, then okay, that person shouldn't be married. They're not ready to be married. They have to they have to be willing to do work on themselves. Sometimes in marriages you come into conflict, and you'll need some counseling. You'll go to a counselor or someone, or just a friend, and if one of the parties doesn't want to deal with it, then it's difficult. Usually it's the man who doesn't want to deal with it. So what I'm talking about is more for women to look at, because women women are more relationship oriented. What I think the men need to look at more is how controlling is a woman, because men have a hard time being overly controlled by women. Does she complain? Does she nag? Is she inflexible? I mean, also is she, this is just how I am, take it or leave it. But generally, because women are more relationship oriented, they don't have so many demands for men. So, but anyway, no, I mean, but I don't know what I mean. I'm too tired. Hare Krishna. Anyway, we have to keep our eyes open. I switched it. There was a man looking to women, and you know, a man wants a woman with a nice disposition, who's helpful, but at the same time, he, as we've discussed, he has to be very accepting of her nature. But at least be, you know, don't go into a relationship and not be aware of any shortcomings an individual has, and not be blind to them. So that was important. That was an answer to your question, how do we find somebody and how do we associate and how do we know they're the right person? You also must, it's very important, you must do prenuptial counseling because this helps you understand if this is the right person by going over your each individual values and interests and goals. Because you may have many things in common, but they have some irreconcilable things in common, and if you can't reconcile, it's better you don't get married because you'll just cause one another to suffer. So when you do premarital counseling, they help you look at all your values, help you look at your nature, and you know, in some cases, they will tell you don't get married now, but you need to do more work because you have to make more compromises, or you have to change in certain areas. So that could avoid a bad marriage, or it can avoid a potential bad marriage where the couple is well matched, but they don't really know how to go into it. So now Ketan says, Bhakti Vishram Madhava Maharaj, and I have a disclaimer here on his statement, is that he's never been married. So we always have to take it with a grain of salt if someone says something about Grihastha life who's never been married. They have a very specific point of view of the relationship. Said this again and again. He may like Krishna, she may like Krishna, but it is not necessary that they both may like each other. Well, if you don't like another person, why would you get married? Oh Prabhu, I found someone I don't like, so I decided to marry her because that way we won't get attached. No, that's crazy. Madness. So, what I would say is, they actually, if they got married, they do like one another, but they don't know how to associate together, and that's why they may think now they don't like one another. But if they really didn't like one another, they wouldn't have got married in the first place, because generally, two people who really don't get on together after a few months will drive one another crazy. So just the fact that you make it past a few months, I would say in most cases, statistics say 70% of the marriages can be saved through counseling. I would say it could be even higher for devotees because we have higher reasons to stay married. And I would say that they don't like one another just because they don't have the skills to interrelate well. And that's why they don't like one another. But they actually do like one another, otherwise they wouldn't have gotten married. And many, many marriages are turned around when people learn skills. Like one of the skills we learned, so nice. You can do this with anybody. You don't have to do it just with your spouse. Every day, say one word of appreciation. So what we're trying to get devotees to do in Grihastha life, in these relationships, is turn away from the negative and turn on the positive. So do more acts of appreciation, do less acts of fault-finding and blame. Do more acts of service, less acts of demand. And when you do these things, they said that you do this one act of appreciation every day, it changes the relationship. If they're just criticizing, then of course, then they'll think they don't like one another, because that's what they're focused on. And I would say if a couple is just criticizing, it's a very unhealthy consciousness, and it's a It's a sore spot in each individual's consciousness which they should look at. Okay, list of things. Yeah, I think I gave you the list, huh? What if we don't have marriage counselors in the place where we live? Find some. Call them on the phone. Skype them. Read books on marriage. Well, the new book is coming out. Heart-to-Heart Connections. We're going to get it here in Mayapur. If you have any friends here in Mayapur coming back to Mumbai or wherever you are, ask them to get the book for you. Because I'm sure it's... they said the book is... What did they say tonight? They said something. The book is revolutionary. It's going to revolutionize the Grihastha ashram in ISKCON. I think, as I was saying, many people have the wrong conception of Grihastha ashram, and so then they think, well, if my relationship's too good, if I show too much of affection, that's Maya, that's material attachment. It's not what Krishna consciousness is. We should be detached. And in that detachment, basically the husband and wife, their relationship becomes so minimal that they practically don't have one. They hardly talk, they hardly do anything together. So the point is, if you have a relationship with another person, you do things together, right? You talk, you eat together. What do? You exchange gifts, you reveal your mind, prasadam. It's the loving exchanges. Well, the loving exchanges are not exempt from Grihastha life. But if you minimize the loving exchanges because you're afraid you'll become too attached, then you end up in this weird relationship. And it's what I say. My honest opinion is that it's just unnatural, and we've been connived into unnatural relationships based on a misunderstanding of philosophy and cultural context in which the philosophy is given. And I would also say that this is prevalent in other areas of ISKCON where many devotees end up acting unnaturally, ways which are not, if we weren't constrained by philosophical misconceptions, we wouldn't naturally act that way. Sometimes we see devotees become very domineering, very critical because devotees are not acting properly, and we become judgmental and so forth. And these are unnatural ways of acting. But based on the philosophy, we're acting this way, which is really unfortunate. I see other areas of our movement where we have problems, and I believe the problems are because we have misunderstood things philosophically, or managerially we've manipulated situations in order to protect things, but we've actually created problems in the name of protection. And we've become overly rigid, so relationships do not develop in a healthy and natural way. They develop in a more artificial way. So we need to be careful. As humans, we have natural feelings and emotions, and we don't want the philosophy to in any way restrict those in the name of, well, I'll just fall into Maya, or I'll become attached. You see, the point as I'm making is, Grihastha life is if you're not attached, there's something wrong with you. That's the point. Okay, I said it. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It took me an hour to say that. And now I know this comes as like, wow, that's a shock. No. If you're with a husband, if you're living with a person who's serving you every day, and you're taking care of them, or vice versa, and you don't become attached, something's wrong with you. It's like there's something like you need a heart operation or something, because when you live in a relationship with someone and there's not affection there, you're not allowing the affection to grow, it's unnatural. It's just, you're with a person, they're serving you, this person's taking care of you, they're providing a home for you. Naturally, you're going to have affection and be attached. This woman is cooking for you, she's cleaning, she's bearing children for you, she's encouraging you. It's natural to be affectionate. If you're not affectionate, something's wrong with you. So then we develop this philosophy, Grihastha life is Maya. So now I can't manifest affection or show affection, or it's not good that I have it, to my wife or my husband because it's not Krishna conscious. Then it's like we're creating people who are dysfunctional, where our philosophy is creating dysfunctional people. And the result of that is we have more divorce than they do in the secular world. And that's proof of my point. That we've totally misunderstood the philosophy to mess us up psychologically. Then you get these guys who become brahmachari, women haters. Oh, women are bad, women are stupid. It's like, there are men like that in the material world, but not that many. There's more of them, and you'll find more of them, or you'll find too many of them in the Hare Krishna movement. And a lot of those men, here's the thing, if those men weren't like that before they were devotees, and they became that way after they become devotees, that is a great fault of our movement, isn't it? Wouldn't you say? If that's what we produced men who look down on women, who prevent women from moving forward in their service. If we've demeaned them in a way that they lose self-confidence, what a great disservice we've done based on a one philosophical statement, or one statement which we don't really understand properly. So, who would be the author of the book? HGHH. HGHH, Heart to Heart Connection. Is that the book you're talking about? Or are you talking about another book? HGHH, Heart to Heart Connection, yeah. The Grihastha Vision team, which is all Prabhupada disciples. And they're part of that team, and they're all professionals, either in marriage counseling or therapy or counseling. They're all trained, that's their background. That's what they do for a living. They wrote the book. So, what I would say is that, of course, you can say, well, our conditioning outside of Krishna consciousness has made us unnatural. That may be true also, but I think a lot of devotees, when they come to Krishna consciousness, they want to do the right thing and they don't understand what it is, and they read things in Shastra and they feel kind of restricted. So, well, I shouldn't do this, and is this right or is this wrong? And we become a little bit, disconnected from human emotion, natural human emotion that should be expressed. So, another way of looking at it, say, if you're actually detached, you'll show affection. And if you're actually attached, you're afraid to show affection because you don't know how to, because you're not advanced enough. So it's kind of shift things around, right? You don't want to you don't want to show affection to the point where it becomes material. But affection towards a devotee in terms of service is not material, right? Is it? So we're meant to show affection. That's the nature of Krishna consciousness. It's all about affectionate relationships between devotees. And somehow we think it's okay, man to man, woman to woman, or guru to disciple. Maybe father to son, father to daughter, mother to son, mother to daughter, but husband and wife, no. Successful marriage is when the husband and wife work together well as a team, right? Is that success? You think, and they don't work well together, that's success because they don't get attached. When they don't talk to one another. My wife and I haven't talked to one another in 3 months. Probably that's great, Just like it's a waste of time to talk to her anyway. You must have more time for service, right? Did I tell you that joke? Did I tell it last week? Women by nature need to speak more than men. It's just the way they're wired. So the joke is, the man says, to his friend, I haven't spoken to my wife in 6 months. He says, why? He says, I didn't want to interrupt her. Did I tell that last week? That joke? So that, you have all these negative jokes about women and, women this, women that. It's actually very unhealthy. And so people may come into our movement, and then you have these unhealthy paradigms floating around about women, and they pick them up, and they wouldn't have normally necessarily have picked them up. And then they enter into marriage with all these negative paradigms. Like that joke, that's a negative paradigm. Mahatma, you shouldn't tell that joke, that's bad. No, it's actually true, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way they're made. That's their nature, they talk more. And men, they talk less. Of course, my wife says I talk more than she does. Maybe I do. So, now, we're going to end here. You have any questions? Well, Ketan, one of the things you can do is go to YouTube. When you go to YouTube, you Google Mahatma Das, and then you have to go down about 4 till you find the Mahatma Das that says channel, and then when you go to channel, then all these lectures are there. I don't know if everything's been uploaded yet, but at least 17 I think have been uploaded, and that's, each class is like an hour and a half to 2 hours. So Ketan says, earlier in India, people used to get married earlier or engaged earlier. So part of the growing up was involving according to their partners. Yeah. Because, see, if you grow up understanding that you're going to be married and what marriage is about, it's not about sense gratification, but it's about raising a family, etc., etc., then you have like healthy paradigms, and then you have the whole family engaged in helping you make choices. And then when you get married, you're there in an extended family with like 10, 15 people, so you're hardly ever alone with your wife, and you have all these mentors and guidance. And so it's, if you're like alone with somebody most of the time, it's harder than if there's 10 other people around, because you can interact with more people. So Guru Nisha says that you're going to get links to this. So Ketan, you need to send your email address to, if she doesn't have it. If you're not on the list to get notifications of these classes, like Shane, I don't know if you're on the list. And ASDKG, if you're not on the list, then just type in your email address here. Oh, then Pallavi left her address. So you just Pallavi_Mishra with an H, 19 at AOL.com. That is Pallavi with 2 L's, _Mishra with an H, 19 at AOL.com, and send her your email address, and she'll send you links to all these classes. Oh, so Pallavi, you can get Ketan's address. All right. Now, did I confuse you? Now you're thinking, wow, I don't know everything I read. I don't know. What do I understand it? Do I not understand it? Now I don't know what I understand. I would just caution you that when you read things, assume you don't fully understand them, and don't be overly convinced that you have the proper understanding. And there's another thing, and I don't know how to say this, but I have to say this because it's important. Sometimes people who are giving class say wrong things. And how do I say this? They don't say wrong things because what they say is right, but what they say is wrong. Do you understand? What they said was right. It was right, but it was wrong. It was inappropriate for the situation, or it was said in a way which wasn't balanced with the other side of it, or it was said without the context, so it wasn't clearly explained. So sometimes, if you hear something and it doesn't sound right or feel right, question it, either to the speaker or somebody else, and say, in class this person said this, but it didn't feel right. And you discuss that with somebody else. What do you think? Is there more to it? I felt this way. So I gave a class in Mayapur in November, I think. And we're talking a lot about your gut instincts, because sometimes you sense things are wrong, even though you can't put it in words. So I had a friend, we were discussing this, and I guess this was a common saying or lyrics from a song. She said, sounds right, feels wrong. So some things, like I said, it's right. What is being said is right. You could say, okay, women are less intelligent. It's there in the books. Women are emotional. It's there in the books. Grihastha life is full of difficulties. It's there in the books. Okay, he said it. What he said was right. And you walk out feeling a little like, well, I'm engaged, but maybe I shouldn't get married, or is this going to work out? You don't feel good about it. And so it sounds right, feels wrong, something, you're not feeling inspired now in your going ahead in your grihastha life, you're feeling confused or something. So sometimes that happens, and sounds right, feels wrong. So it's just something I want to throw out there. I don't know if you can always know, and you can't, but I just want to point out that sometimes even the person giving class, even though they're very senior, very, very senior, sometimes may say something which is not right. So one of the facilitators of the course said that one senior sannyasi was giving class and he explained something about household life. And she came up to him after class and said, that wasn't right. You shouldn't have said that. So he apologized for that, and he said, well, can you give me something to read so that I'll be clear on it? And she said, it's better you just don't talk about it, and if anyone asks you about it, let us talk about it. So basically she was saying that some people, just because of their experience in life or their nature, they may not be the best persons to talk about certain topics. But as teachers, sometimes we feel obligated, or we're meant to talk about everything, or we're so used to talking about everything that we just end up talking about everything, and sometimes we talk about things that we don't know that much about. And I just wanted to throw that out there without being offensive to anybody, but I know some of you, sometimes you'll hear something in class and you'll question it. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right with you. Internally, you may be conflicted, or just say, I don't, that seems to be out of context, or seems to be very one-sided. That if you feel that way, it's probably true. But what the person said is also true, but just maybe not presented because of their own life experience. It's presented from one angle, which is their life experience, which doesn't ingest the full context. So then, just don't shoot me for saying that. I think I say things which I could get shot for, but I say them because I believe, well, I really won't get shot, but some people may think it's strange that I say things like this, because these are not normally things that you say, but I think they're very important things you say. Sometimes, Prabhupada said that, Prabhupada once said, they don't believe every Prabhupada said. They say Prabhupada said, don't believe everything that they say that Prabhupada said. Okay, now Guru Nishan is asking a very hot potato question. That applies to one guru as well? Yes, it does. I had an issue in Bangalore with one devotee, aspiring disciple, and he said he had some issues he wanted to discuss with me, and he asked if it's okay, and he said, I don't want to be offensive, but certain things go through my mind when I see you do certain things. And he had a couple issues. Nothing big, nothing that I was really doing wrong, but in his mind it was, he knew it wasn't wrong, but it just came to his mind. He said, I have to talk about it. Is that okay? And I said, it's not only is it okay if you have those issues and you don't tell me, that's not okay. because I want to be able to clear them up. And so he explained the issues that he had, and then we talked about it. And I said, yeah, before you take initiation, and you can have so many issues, and after you take initiation, then if you see an issue, then you just approach respectfully and say, Guru Maharaj, you said this, so-and-so Maharaj said that, I'm confused because what you said is not, it doesn't sit as well with me as what this other person said, or this other person has a better effect. Or I saw you doing this, but you always teach doing that. I saw you, you were chanting your rounds, and every 2 minutes you were talking to somebody, and you must have only got half your rounds done. And in your classes you'd say that it's offensive to talk when you chant, and it just bothered me, and I humbly, just wanted to present that to you. Some gurus would not like it. If you're asking me, I like it, because I've seen devotees have trouble because they weren't able to approach their guru with some doubt. So I think it's important. And I don't think that I would not say something at some point which is out of context, which is not complete, which may not be even perfectly applicable in every situation. And sometimes all you need is clarification, or sometimes you may come to me and say, yeah, it's true, I didn't explain the other side well enough. This is the other side. Thank you for bringing that to me. So I think that's important. Now, naturally, a disciple is going to do that cautiously, because every week they don't want to come to their guru and say, you said that, but I don't really agree with it. But now I know some gurus, some people would say, no, what Mahatma is saying is wrong, that's offensive, the disciple should just accept everything the guru says. I'm only saying this because I've seen devotees personally with my own eyes have trouble with their gurus because they couldn't talk to them, because their gurus had acted in a way that disturbed them. And I'm not saying what the guru did was wrong, but I'm saying it disturbed the disciple to the degree that they actually left Krishna consciousness. And if there could have been good communication between the guru and disciple, it could have been resolved. So, okay, Antonio's off. It's morning for all you guys, so you're all going off. Jeremy was through a situation where he sensed that his former guru was doing something which was not Krishna conscious. And we had a situation, I was just thinking about this in Jeremy, we had a situation. Well, okay, hold on a second. One Guru Nisha says, one devotee once told me that if you don't ask questions, that means you didn't understand it well. Maybe it just means that one accepts what is... Yeah, it can be either one. Questions are generally a sign that you're going deeper into something. Not that necessarily you didn't understand it, but you want to go deeper. So I was thinking about Jeremy and Antonio. Before they had met me, they were initiated. And their guru in her own personal life had very bad experiences with the opposite sex. So their guru was a woman outside of ISKCON, but a devotee. And so she preached very strongly to them that they shouldn't get married. So none of them got married, but they needed to be married. It was natural. And so that's a case when we as individuals, as teachers, or gurus, not just gurus, but teachers, when we ourselves are out of balance, we may teach something that's also out of balance because we're out of balance. So we want to work on ourselves and be in complete balance, so our teachings will be balanced. So I was just thinking about that, Jeremy, that you had a spiritual master who was so dead set against marriage because of her own bad experiences. She didn't want any of her disciples to be married. And so that means especially the women had to suppress their natural need and desire to be married because their guru was preaching so strongly against it. So that's unhealthy. So that's, so you as an individual, if you feel, let's say, particularly a woman, you feel like, but I have this strong biological need to have children and to be taken care of by a man, and my guru is preaching it's complete absolute maya to get married, you should never do it. and that doesn't feel right to you, then you have to go to your guru and say, but Prabhupada was married, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was married, so many gurus in ISKCON are married, I don't understand what you're saying, why? This doesn't feel right to me, it's putting me in anxiety, and I don't think I can make it without being married. You just have to come and tell them that. Yes? One senior Grihastha devotee from ISKCON Pune told me, do you really follow the Four Regular Principles? I told him yes. He just fired on me, explaining many things from a book written by Manu, like, if a Mataji is watching a male person on TV without her husband, this is also a form of illicit sex. Wow. So where do we draw a line, the limit for following the Four Regular Principles? Interesting question. I did a workshop on sexual purity, and I realized that there's so many kinds of pornography that we don't see as pornography, and so here this devotee is pointing it out that if you just look at a woman and you enjoy the beauty of that woman, it's a kind of pornography, because pornography is just something that stimulates you sexually. So even if a woman is dressed from head to toe, even in a burqa, but you're looking at her and somehow you're stimulated because you can see some form of her body, that's a kind of pornography. So anytime you try to enjoy the opposite sex, even if you're not in physical proximity, it is a kind of pornography. So Prabhupada answered this question in a lecture. There's a devotee named Yajnavalkya, and he defined what brahmacharya means. And he said, you don't talk about it, you don't think about it, you don't plan to do it, you don't do it. It's just you have nothing to do with sex. That's celibacy. It's not in your mind, it's not in your tongue. You're not looking, if there's some magazine in your home and it's got some picture on it of a woman in a bathing suit, you just throw it away, you burn it, you tear it up, It's just nothing. So that's what it means to be celibate. But Prabhupada said in Kali Yuga, you're not held responsible for your thoughts. So he said, so therefore we say no illicit sex, which means physical sex. But it's good to be aware of the subtle aspects of sex. But it's not, when you make your vow, then you're making your vow to follow the Four Regular Principles grossly. But ideally you should follow it subtly as well. So you can say for your own self, if you want to say, well, I'm not perfectly following the Four Regular Principles because I still think about it, or I still enjoy looking at women and so on. But you are following the Four Regular Principles, maybe not as perfectly as you'd like to. So, is there anything else you want to ask? I know a lot of you ask me personally email questions, so anything personal, obviously you can ask there. Anything general, you can ask here. And if not, we will bid you adieu, fare thee well, adios, namaste. Is namaste goodbye also? Hello and goodbye? To the God within, we pay obeisances. To Krishna. To the divine within, all of you. Okay.